Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. This is Moyna Bass Fishes. I am Jim Moyna, professional bass fisherman. In this video, we are going to discuss the Champions Tour tournament, the 2024 Champions Tour tournament on Gull Lake that was held yesterday, which was July 17th or 16th, one of the two. All right, so I finished 15th place out of a field of 64. I had, now this is, in case if you're new to the Champions Tour, this is a catch, weigh it in the boat, and release format. So every fisherman has a assigned boat marshal or official that does the weighing of the fish and just oversees the whole day's operation, really. So with that being the case, every fish that you catch counts towards your total, as long as they have a minimum size of 1 pound. All right, so anyways, I had a total of 42 bass for about 72 pounds or so, which was, and that put me in 15th place. And that was kind of my goal. I was hoping I could get to 40 fish, and I felt like that was an optimistic goal. I felt like that was going to be hard to get to that, but I feel good that I actually made that goal, because usually in these tournaments I usually fall short of what my optimistic, best case scenario is. A lot of times I fall short of that. So this time made it, and plus a couple extras. So, but the bad thing was that was only good enough for 15th place, which freaking blew my mind. I mean, after I had kind of a quick start, what I thought was a quick start, and probably about 45 minutes into it, I turn to my marshal and I say, okay, all right, what place am I in? And I'm expecting, well, first of all, I'm wondering, I'm curious as to why there's no camera boats coming my way. How come I'm not getting a call from tournament director Paul Newman or one of the cameramen, asking where I am so they can put a camera on me? I'm kind of wondering what's going on. So I asked my marshal, I'm like, yeah, what place am I in now? And I'm thinking, maybe a third, fourth, fifth, or sixth, place kind of an answer. But no, I was like in 13th or 14th place at that point. And it was like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, this is one of my best spots right here, and that's all I'm at. So that was a shocker, man. They really caught the, oh, dang it, look at that. I just noticed something on this. The insert on that is gone. Oh boy. Anyhow, so yeah, I ended up 15th place overall with 42 fish. Now, so let's get into how the day went. How did I catch them? Well, with the Champions Tour, they split the lake, so everybody fishes on one half of the lake part of the day on the first morning session, then you fish the other half in the afternoon session. They actually had some overlapping water in this tournament, which played into my head a little bit. So, but anyways, to start the day, we had to fish south of the little bridge up by, it used to be Bar Harbor up that way. Zorba's, I think, there's a restaurant called Zorba's right there where there's a little bridge. So everybody had fished south of there in the morning session. So I chose, in practice, my deep fishing in the main lake was sketchy. So, which to me, there's some good fish out there, but this year, I practice an area. There's one particular area where I always can go there and catch some fish. In that area, they kind of move around how they use that area, but I can always find them. And I found just wonderful looking freaking coontail and cabbage beds, and it just looked beautiful. So, but I fished main lake stuff like that for like 5 hours the first day of practice, and I had like maybe one or two little bass. That was it, and that ain't gonna cut it. So, and I couldn't understand. I could not understand what I was doing wrong. Um, so, anyways, I ended up going down into Wilson's Bay and finding some fish down there, and so that's where I fished my morning session down in Wilson's Bay. I found couple places there. I found more than one area. I found several areas, but in the tournament, I actually just fished two of them, which was kind of a mistake, and I'll get to that. The first place I pulled up to, I probably caught about 5, maybe 6, and that was good. So then I went to my second area, and that's where I stayed the rest of the time, the rest of the morning session. It was a weed line about 150 yards long, where I just went back and forth on it because I kept seeing fish on my Lowrance active target. And so, like, why move? I kept seeing fish, and I don't know, I was catching fish. But what killed me was the last 25 minutes to 30 minutes of that round. And I even said to my marshal, I said, right about now, I got to make a decision. Do I just fish out the rest of the session here, or do I go to one of my other areas, which I haven't touched? In fact, there's one area within eyesight, and I was totally eyeballing that up. But I continued to fish where I was, and then I saw a guy pull in there with probably about 20-25 minutes left, and I'm like, well, that takes that option out of the cards, and I ended up not catching another fish. I hooked up on one, and it came off, but it was really interesting in that I just felt there was so many more fish there to catch, is what I felt like. And the reason why I felt like that is I had seen, probably with about 40 minutes left to fish, I caught 2 fish. And one of those fish I caught was out of a school of like 10 fish that were swimming out in the open off the weeds. And I saw them, and I caught. And the problem is, you only catch one out of a school like that, because they're on the hunt, they're on the prowl. So you hook the one, and the rest kind of follow it, and then you land the fish. And meanwhile, those fish disperse that were following it. So by the time you land the fish, you take it off the hook. You have to take a picture of every fish you catch in this tournament. And then you weigh it, and then release it, and then get back up on the trolling motor. Well, those fish that were in that school have now, who knows where they are, because I can never find them again. And they a lot of times, I think in this particular bunch, they probably just sank down into the weeds, and I don't know, I couldn't find them. But so that's why I stuck out in that. For the last, half hour, I stuck it out in that area because I knew those fish were around. Plus, I saw another pod of fish that was maybe 3 or 4. And plus, who knows what other fish are lurking, because there is some heavy weed cover there. And a lot of the times when I catch one is when they would stick their heads out of the weeds. And I could see them on my Lowrance active target. The weeds were really dense, so you couldn't see anything inside the weeds. But when they'd stick their head outside of the weeds or above the weeds, you could see it, and then you could target your cast and catch those fish. So I'll show you what I was using to target them. This is what I caught them on. Was this? This is a Nico rig, little curly worm, and I got a weight inserted in here. And basically, when I saw a fish, I just throw this over there, and most of the time they would eat it. Just about every time they'd eat it. So that that was good. The problem is when I didn't see a fish with that, then that bait does take a. And these are fish that were sitting up above the weeds, so I didn't want to put on a heavy bait that would just blow right by them on the sink. I wanted one that could just stay up in the water column. So that's why I went with that lightly weighted Nico rig. Another bait that might have worked, but I never really used it much, would be like a Ned rig or a jigworm. That'd be a Ned rig. That's the all-terrain tackle Ned rig. Ned rig head, Ned head. And then of course that's a Billy Rubs Ned bait there. The other thing that worked well, and this is I don't know if I made a mistake by not doing this, because they were biting this bait pretty good in practice. This would have been more of in the evening in practice, and the fish were just hot. But a chatterbait, this would be a 3/4 ounce, and actually this is a chatterbait, 3/4 ounce chatterbait. They actually bit that pretty good in practice. So, and what was effective about it was you could just run it across the tops of the weed tops, because a lot of times you couldn't see the fish, because the fish were, I don't think they're positioned on the bottom so much, but they're suspended in the weeds, but they'd be suspended down in the weeds enough to where I couldn't see them with the Lowrance Active Target, because the weeds were too dense. So if I run that right across the tops, then the fish that were just a few feet down hidden in the weeds would, rise up to it and eat it. And that would allow me to, even if they didn't eat it, with each cast, I'd have my active target beam on my cast, and then I could see fish rise out of the weeds and maybe start following it. And if they didn't bite it, then I could go back to my Nico rig and throw it over to where I saw that fish rise out of the weeds. So, but I never really, I caught one on this in the tournament that morning, in the morning session. And, but I didn't really throw it that much. Some, but not a whole lot. All right, so now let's go to the afternoon session, where I fished a little bit different, not a whole lot different, but somewhat. So the way they drew it, so now in the afternoon session, we had to fish above a line that was drawn from the creek that goes into Round Lake. We had to, if you drew a line from there around and over to Sandy Point, a point called Sandy Point over on the west side, then you had to fish north of that line. So that gave you, the upper part of Main Lake Gull, and then everything north of there, including all the little lakes that connect up there, Upper Gull, Roy, and this one. All right, so my strategy was to, I was kind of unsure what my strategy was going to be, because when I practiced in the little lakes way north, I really wasn't tearing them up there. I was catching some fish, but I wasn't catching them at a pace that I felt like was good enough. But I felt like I could at least do something there. And then then the Main Lake stuff that I practiced up on that side of the lake, I was not catching them at a good enough pace and to even consider that for my time. And then the other thing was fishing the docks up in that part of the lake. So, and I felt like I could catch them at a decent enough pace off those docks. The problem was all them docks were also included in the morning session. So I didn't know how beat up those docks had gotten. I didn't know if anybody had hit them. I didn't know how many people had hit them. I didn't know any of that. So, so that just got me wondering what to do about that. But I decided to start on them docks, because I don't like fishing use docks in Minnesota tournaments because it's just they just get picked over and they don't replenish very well in most cases. It just depends how many fish are on them and what's going on. But I felt like we are in a situation where these fish wouldn't really be replenishing these docks. So, but I decided, so the gamble is, well, maybe these docks I'm picking are all been hit already in the morning session, because this was in what we called the neutral zone, where it was a part of the lake where you could fish at morning or in the afternoon. So, anyways, I pull up on a stretch, and it didn't take too long. I think it was about my second or third dock. I caught one. Meanwhile, a guy pulls in 200 yards, maybe 300 yards up on the same stretch, which gave me plenty of time, plenty of docks between, that's an acceptable distance. And then I end up catching another one. And then meanwhile, another guy pulls in to split the difference between me and the guy that was ahead of me. So he's about 125 yards ahead of me, maybe 100, something like that. Which still, considering the situation, that's still, you can't get too upset about that. I mean, I probably had like 15 docks between me and him, maybe something like that. So I'm not going to get too upset about that, other than I was frustrated because of course you want the whole stretch to yourself, but there's only so many docks, and there's a lot of guys like to fish docks. So, but anyhow, I ended up catching like 3 or 4 off them docks, lost a couple. Then I ended up basically catching up to the guy in front of me, and I'm not going to jump around him. So I pull out and I go back to where I started and start working down the shoreline the other way. And in fact, there was a couple of really good docks from practice down that way where I shook off several fish. Well, I got to those docks and I never even had a bite. Never had a bite. And I didn't hook any of those fish in practice, but I never had a bite. So now I'm like thinking, did these docks just get beat up in the morning session really bad? What to do? Meanwhile, then also I'm thinking, well, back, up in, Upper Gull, Roy, Nisswa, that was all off limits in the morning. So none of those fish have been fished. So I decided that's what I was going to do. I was going to, I'm probably a good 50 minutes, close to an hour into the afternoon session. And I pulled the plug on what I was doing and decided to go up into the little lakes, which the risk there, especially if you go all the way to the farthest one, Lake Nisswa, which was where I wanted to get to, it's literally from where I was on the upper part of Gull Lake. It was probably another, to get all the way to Nisswa, it's probably a half hour of idle time, of run time, because there's a lot of slow wake zones. So it's literally like a half hour. So I'm giving up that half hour and then another 15 minutes at the end of the day, because we get lines out. Lines out in this term is at 3:30. You have to be done fishing at 3:30. You don't have to be back to the weigh-in or the check-in at 3:30. You just have to have your lines out. But you do have to be back to the weigh-in by 3:45. So I would have to, if I go all the way to Lake Nisswa, I'd probably have to leave out of there at like 3:15, 3:10 to make sure I get back on time, all the way back to Ernie's restaurant down on Gull Lake. So that was the big risk factor, was giving up that time, the half hour to get there, and then the extra 15 minutes, because I'd have to quit early before the lines out period. I'd have to actually quit before that 3:30 time hit, because I'd have to leave at 3:15. So So I'm giving up 45 minutes of not catching fish, and that was that was a hard uh, that was a hard decision to make. It's like, do I stay on this dock pattern where it seems like there's a lot of competition to fish these docks, or do I go up and give up all that fishing time to possibly, like I said in practice, I didn't really tear them up there, but in my mind I felt like, I feel like by the end of the time, I feel like I can catch, even though I'm giving up that fishing time, I can catch more fish in the rest of the day by doing that than fishing them docks. So that's what I did. And I didn't stop. I went up there. I didn't stop till I got into Roy Lake. And as it turned out, I never left Roy Lake. I mean, the end goal was Lake Nisswa. But I never got out of Roy because I had something that was working there and never left. So ended up leaving out of there at about 3:15 and got back to Ernie's with about 2 minutes to spare. So anyhow, so I ended up with, in the morning session I had 22 fish. In the afternoon session I had 20 fish. And here's how I caught them in the afternoon fish. Now, first of all, the docks. This is a dock setup that I use quite often. I was just skipping a Billy Rub's worm. This is a straight tail worm. I was skipping that, and it's got a weed guard on there. Just skipping that under the docks, and there's a little weight. I got a little weight in there, little weight embedded into the nose of this thing. So I'd skip that and then just fish it really slow, until it got out from under the dock. Then I'd reel it in and recast. So that's how I caught those. Then I also caught one fish today. There were some lily pads by some docks. So I'd take this Texas rig bait here. So this is what I'd throw into the docks. That is, that's a 3/4 ounce. It wasn't really heavy. You had these lily pads and you had a little bit of weeds blowing into some of the pads. So that's a 3/4 ounce weight on there. And so I'd flip that in there. So I did catch one on that, kind of a nice little bonus fish. And then then when I went up into the little lakes, I went back to this bait, and that was a bait that I would throw just out on the weed line. And I wasn't really, I saw one fish on my Lowrance active target that I weighed, but otherwise I couldn't see any of the fish. I was just throwing that out there, out on the weeds, and just hoping for the best. So I ended up, 20 fish in the afternoon, 22 in the morning session. So that's how I caught all my fish. What would I do different in this tournament? I don't know. I'll tell you this, the dock bite in the afternoon there were plenty of docks. A lot of guys caught fish on docks. In fact, the guy that got second place on stage, he said he got on a stretch of docks, maybe 100 yards long or 100, something like that, 150, 100 yards long, where he just kept going back and forth on the same ones, which I don't know if it was a little uncertain if he was actually catching them on the docks or in the weeds around the docks or both. It was a little unclear from what he was saying, but anyhow, and then plus other guys that fish docks got in the top 10, notorious dock fishermen. So was I smart by giving up on the docks when I did? I don't know. Who knows? I really don't know at this point, because I do know I'm pretty good at it, but you have to be fishing docks to catch fish from under docks, which I don't know. I don't know. I'll never know. The other decision I want back was the morning session. Is where I mentioned this earlier, where in the last 30 minutes I never caught a fish, and the whole time, like I was saying, I was asking myself with about 30 minutes left, should I stay here or should I go to that spot over there? Well, somebody did pull into that spot, and that person told me they caught 5 there in the last 20 minutes of the morning session off that spot. So I'm not saying I would have caught 5 or any of them, but I don't know. I needed to make that move, because where I was, I felt like I was fishing for maybe 1 or 2 more bites in the last 30 minutes. Whereas had I made that move, there was a higher ceiling to what I could catch. Not just 1 or 2. I might have caught none. I might have caught 1. I might have caught 2. But then the ceiling was higher. Whereas where I was, because I've been working on it all morning, or quite a bit of the morning, it was maybe capped to some degree. Anyhow, that's what I know about the Gull Lake tournament. Again, it was 15th place finish. They paid to 20, so I made the money. So I'm back on a money streak again after missing out on 2 checks. The one at Lake St. Clair last week, and then the one on Lake Vermilion right before that. So, but we're on a money streak again, so let's keep it going. The next tournament is another Champions Tour tournament on the St. Croix River coming up in a few weeks. That'll be fun. That'll be interesting, and hopefully that'll be a win. Thanks for watching. Over.